Welcome back to Core Anesthesia. Whether you are a student prepping for tests and boards or a CRNA here to earn CEUs, we are glad you've joined us. For more about us, make sure to check us out on Instagram at Core Anesthesia and online at coreanesthesia.com.
Welcome back to Core Anesthesia. I'm Cole here with Tanner, and today we want to do a real talk discussion regarding life outside of school, what life looks like post-graduation. We did one of these talks a couple months after graduating when we were just settling into our jobs. And now we want to just touch base again now that it's been over a year. It's been about a year and a half since Tanner and I graduated. We've been working a little over a year at our jobs now, and we thought we would just kind of touch base again about what life is like now that we're a year into our careers. We've settled in a lot more. What are the positives? What are the negatives? What are things we wish we would have known when we graduated? What are things that we just want to pass on to you guys? And we're just excited about doing life as CRNAs. And so, Tanner, do you just want to start us off? I guess what's the biggest change, would you say, from when we last did one of these episodes a couple months into our careers? I remember we were talking last time about the stress and anxiety that those first couple months bring that I feel like weren't really taught to us or at least shown to us before we graduated. It was kind of, at least I felt like when I graduated, it would just be blissful transition into life as a CRNA. And we talked last time about how the first couple months were actually pretty challenging, just having to do everything on your own now. You don't have a preceptor that has an extra pair of hands helping you and an extra mind helping you. You're on your own. But I guess what's the biggest difference between last when we talked about that stage to where you are now?
Yeah, I think especially this last week, we've been just chatting with a lot of people on Instagram and through different messaging. And, you hear people say, school is extremely stressful and, it's such a long haul. They're not sure if they can keep going. It's so difficult. And for me, those feelings were some of the strongest when I was out of school. And when I had first started as a CRNA, those first couple of months were some of the most, doubt-filled moments of my career. I thought that I didn't really have what it took to do this. And I was getting really, really nervous that I just spent 3 years of my life going through this grueling program for something that I didn't really even enjoy. I was not sleeping very well. I was staying up late the night before cases, looking things up. And I just thought, man, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. And when we did our last recording talking about being a year out, we had talked about how that had dissipated quite a bit. And I would say the biggest change is that trend just keeps on going. And I don't know that there's any really way for you to get ahead of that curve, other than being day in and day out in the OR, and you just keep seeing more and more things. Well, I know you and I will talk about something, if it's something crazy that happens in the OR, we'll be texting each other, call each other. And I think that is just like the more experiences you have, the more times you see different things, then I feel like just the easier your day goes, because you see something change and you're like, well, I've seen that before. This is what I'm going to do. Or that's not a big deal. I've seen that before. It worked out this way, or, whatever, or you know where your resources are. If something is happening that's stressful, you know how to manage it. And you have all those tools coming out of school. But for me, it was just the time to actually practice those things on my own. That trajectory of feeling more and more confident and feeling less and less stressed about my daily, workflow has just continued to go in the positive direction. So for me now, I don't even think about work. I go in the morning, I see what cases I'm going to do. I, look up those patients, and I feel like I'm able to take great, excellent care of those patients, but I don't feel like work at all consumes my day to day. And that has just been a huge game changer from especially the first several months. And then also since we recorded last time. I know, Cole, you've added several specialties to what you've done since then. So do you feel like you are kind of like in this cycle of getting comfortable going into new specialties, having to go through that uncomfortable period again? Or do you feel like overall it's kind of the same story?
Yeah, it's a good point to bring up. So I would say to back up before I answer that question, I think I've said this before actually, but the first year, especially I've heard from so many people, you just exponentially grow so much and you're going to be challenged so much. And I've said so many times before, and especially in anesthesia school, if you can get comfortable being uncomfortable, then you're going to be fine because anesthesia school, you're constantly rotating from clinical site to new preceptor to new preceptor, new cases. It's just always new. And so you have to get used to being uncomfortable. And the same is true when you start fresh out of school at your first job. You're going to be uncomfortable for the first couple of weeks to maybe even a couple months. And that's just because it's just another level of growth. And so after about 6 months, or I think it was about 4 months into working, I got asked if I wanted to join the open heart team at our level 1 trauma center. And first I was like, I don't know. I'm still kind of stressed with just getting used to being on my own. The more I thought about it, after talking to a lot of people, because that first year you grow so much, I figured I already have some of the knowledge from cardiac from just graduating school. It's more fresh in my mind than if I'd wait a couple of years. I'm already used to being uncomfortable right now. I might as well just continue to be uncomfortable for a few more weeks and get used to doing cardiac on my own and getting the flow of cardiac down at this facility, and it'll just grow me into a better provider. So exactly as you pointed out, Tanner, that thought process went through my mind of, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable for a couple of weeks. I'm going to grow here. And sure enough, it took about a month or two. And then I really settled into cardiac where if I get assigned that the next day, it doesn't even faze me. Even if I have two hearts that day and I'm doing a 12-hour shift, that used to completely throw me for a loop the night before when I get that assignment. And now, as you mentioned, it doesn't even faze me the night before. But then a couple months later, I got asked if I wanted to join the OB team. And that would be a whole different change of schedule. That was going to be doing 24-hour OB shifts in-house. And it's a really busy OB to the point where I think probably on average, I have more than 10 patients at a time on the floor that I either am having epidurals being run, we're going to be doing C-sections later that day, et cetera. So it's not some of the clinical sites I went to where it was a little bit lower key OB. This was something that would keep me a lot busier. And because it's that level 1 trauma center, we get all the transports and all the sick OB people. And that made me nervous because I didn't have any of that in school. I only had the, quote, bread and butter OB cases. But again, I told myself I just got used to cardiac. Let's just make this one more jump, one more leap, get used to OB here. I'll be uncomfortable switching to this new schedule, trying to sleep in the hospital for a couple of weeks, and then hopefully I'll settle in. And sure enough, because I was used to being uncomfortable, I just got the hang of it quicker than some of the other people that had just joined at the same time I did, that had been out for a couple of years already, just because they had gotten used to being comfortable. And I was still used to being uncomfortable. And so I think that really helped me in gaining that side of things as well. And so now I've really settled in. My wife and I were just talking about a month ago about this, that I feel like I've joined the different specialties that I want to join. And now I feel comfortable with anything that they throw at me, whether it's a peds patient, whether it's a trauma patient, whether it's an OB patient, whether it's a cardiac patient, because I took the extra few months to be uncomfortable and stretch myself. Now I feel a lot more comfortable with whatever comes my way, and it doesn't stress me out near as much.
It just seems like it's so much more enjoyable. And I know if you're in school, like literally all you can think about is just being out of school. I remember we were like, I don't know how many different countdowns we had, Cole. We had on our phone and our planners and our computer, and we just couldn't wait till we get out of school. And I think that was the scary moment for me when I didn't immediately assimilate into being a CRNA. And I thought, like, oh, this is just going to be a continuation of the stress that we had in school. But like, not only do you not think about work, but when you're at work, like what you just said, where you feel comfortable with whatever's thrown at you, I feel like it just makes your work so much more enjoyable. And I remember people saying like, oh, I just love being a CRNA. It's the best career choice. And in those first 3 months, I was like, you guys are crazy. This is like the more stressed than I've ever been. I'm putting in all this work at home. And now I actually was talking to somebody yesterday about it, and they're going to nursing school, and they asked if I like being a CRNA. And I'm like, I genuinely love it. I love being at the hospital, taking care of patients. It's fun now that you're getting past just like getting the patient safely from pre-op to PACU. Now you're like putting your own style on things and what you like to do. You have your own ways that you like to do your anesthetic, and you're just starting to develop that every single day. And like I said earlier, you start to see more and more things, and so you just get more comfortable taking things in stride. You've got more experience that you can draw on. And I would say just my work life balance is better, but also just my time at work is so much better. I really enjoy that. And I feel much more fulfilled at work. And I don't think I ever really felt that in the ICU. I mean, I enjoyed parts of it, but I didn't really love it. And I really enjoy giving anesthesia. It's been a blast.
You mean you don't miss wiping butts in the ICU?
Oh man. That was like I hated it. I literally like that was uh if you're still in the ICU, like love you. But oh man, I'm so glad that I'm not doing that anymore.
I'm very
My back is so glad I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm very grateful for the ICU experience I had and how much
For sure.
knowledge it gave me to be able to go on to this next step. But
Yeah.
to echo off what Tanner said, it is by far the most satisfying career choice I think I could have made. I love the idea that it's just instantly gratifying. You have the instant gratification in the sense of you go to PACU and you drop a patient off and you walk out and they open their eyes when you say their name and they respond appropriately and they say they're in no pain and they're comfortable. That is the most gratifying feeling there is. And then, but you at the same time have those cases where you drop the patient off and they're just in so much pain and recovery and you're trying to manage them appropriately. And of course, those cases you have to step back from, figure out what you're going to be doing differently next time, what you should have done differently, things you could have added, etc. But it's constantly a refining process. And I just love how much of an art anesthesia is. And you can, as Tanner said, create your own style of doing it. And a lot of people, because I'm a very social person, a lot of people told me, man, you like anesthesia. It just seems like not you because you're isolated behind the drapes during a long case or whatever it may be. But I actually find just being in the OR setting, just once you're comfortable, you're used to the OR staff, you're not jumping from clinical site to clinical site. There is a lot of social atmosphere that goes on to that as well. So I do love finally having the feeling of having coworkers again. Because going through school, I felt like I was a homeless person, just going from place to place to place. You could never really form relationships with people that you were working with. So it just feels really good to finally have a place to call home. You're settled in, you're comfortable now in this environment. And the stress isn't there. I guess for me, I wanted to have a good reputation starting off. I didn't want to be the quote new guy just out of school and doesn't know what he's doing, making mistakes. And now I feel like I'm at the point where people know me enough that if I do make a mistake, I'm not near as stressed about it in terms of how people will view me in the OR. I'm just a lot more comfortable with the whole interdisciplinary team, the surgeons, the nurses, the circulators, the techs. I mean, you name it. It's just nice to be able to have that aspect of a work environment back that I feel like I didn't have for 3 years while I was going to school.
That was one of the most frustrating things as a student, I felt like, is that if you did have a case that went, a little sideways, or you had, not a smooth wake up or whatever, like that was the one thing that room was going to judge you on, because you had no track record with them. You were only there for a couple of weeks, and it was like, man, it was almost like double punishment, because not only were you frustrated with yourself because you wanted to obviously have a different patient outcome, or have the experience be different, but then you felt like everybody was, looking at you like, man, this person doesn't know what they're doing, or this is like, oh man, this is not going well. And to your point, Cole, like when you have a track record somewhere, it's so nice when you do have those moments, like they're a long wake up, or they wake up in pain, or whatever. You have a track record, you have rapport with the other staff, and I just feel like that's just another. I mean, it shouldn't be a very important thing on your mind, but it probably does weigh on your mind, and it's just nice that doesn't have to be such an issue anymore now that you do have those longer term relationships. Something that I keep hearing from people is well, two things. One, I hear, do you feel like it's still worth it to go into CRNA school because is it getting saturated with CRNAs, and now everybody seems like in the past several years people have really like caught wind of what a CRNA does, what it's the best job in the world. And, all these programs are super competitive. They're bringing out all these CRNAs. Is it getting too diluted? So that'd be my first question to you. And then two, I feel like we get a ton of questions about the first job. Like, how do you find your first job? How do you know where you want to work? How do you know all the, if you're ready, or the experiences? And I guess after being in it for a year and a half, what would you say, how important would you say your first job is? Do you feel like you're there for the long term? Do you feel like it's easy to move out of your first job? Do you feel like it's easy to find other work? What does that look like in hindsight? Because I remember getting out of school and feeling the weight of that first job question. But I would say my perspective has changed since being out of school.
100%. To answer your first question, no, I do not think that CRNAs are getting diluted. When I first started my anesthesia journey back in the ICU and I got accepted into anesthesia school, there were multiple people, both in anesthesia and then in other fields in healthcare, that said nurse anesthesia is healthcare's most hidden gem, meaning that it was the all-around best job in terms of job quality, job satisfaction, pay, just everything together. People all across the board told me it was healthcare's hidden gem, and I still think that's the case. I mean, by far, I love what I do. Obviously, we get paid well. The satisfaction is high. We have so much autonomy that I love. And yeah, because of that, you now have a lot more people going to school, and they're opening new schools. I see different schools in the last few years popping up all across the country. They're accepting more people. You're having more applicants, more people getting turned away just because there's so many more applicants. And I know it's a journey. It's a journey both to get into schools is the first huge hurdle. And then after that, obviously getting through school, which I think is another reason that I tell people what I went through when I struggled so hard in school, when I countless times thought about quitting over and over and over. I had to remind myself, look how hard I fought to get to this point. And myself 3 years ago would have been kicking my present self in the butt, in the rear, because I'm even considering trying to quit right now. I should be grateful because I prayed so long to even be in this position. So that's the first hurdle, is even to get into school. And then you get through school, and then you finally get into that job placement. And even though there's so many more people doing it and going through that route, I see there's so many more facilities popping up, outpatient facilities, outpatient surgeries, ambulatory settings, a lot more GI centers. I mean, there's so many different anesthesia jobs that it's just, we can't fill all of them right now. It's still a shortage, at least from my point of view. I'm almost anywhere I look across the country. So it's definitely still a great career path to choose. I would not be concerned about any type of job security problems in the near future. Secondly, though, to answer your second question about the first job and how do you know what is the best first job, something that I tend to tell students that I have in the OR is, because that first year is so important in terms of your growth and that exponential acceleration and your confidence and your experience, your ability to perform anesthesia on your own and your own style, because that's so important during that time span. I tell people, when you're looking for your first job, don't necessarily isolate yourself to one area of anesthesia. Even if it's an area that you really want to do long term, I would encourage you to find a job, at least for a year, that kind of gives you an overarching view of anesthesia in terms of it gives you experience in different areas, neuro, ortho, general, whatever it may be, peds. Just give yourself something that doesn't limit itself to some of those areas. And that's one of the reasons I chose the facility that I did, is because I wanted to again, while I was used to being uncomfortable, just get used to then taking care of all sorts of patients so that now I can be comfortable in any situation. One thing that I miss and I really wish my job would have offered me is that CRNAs could do peripheral nerve blocks. And that's something I loved in school, but that's something that the MDAs do at our facility, and CRNAs don't really do those. I mean, we do epidurals and spinals, and we do line placements, but we don't do any peripheral nerve blocks. And that was something that Tanner got to do. And Tanner I saw excelled exponentially over that first year in doing peripheral nerve blocks, whereas I missed out on that. And so I would recommend that people don't limit themselves in that first job to only certain areas or aspects of anesthesia, just because you're going to lose so much from school if you don't use it in that first year.
I would agree. And then I'd also offer maybe a little bit different of advice. I would also say that as you get out of school further and everything slows down, like what we've been talking about at the beginning of this episode, that I do think that if there's something that you want to learn, if you want to move into OB, if you want to move into getting back into nerve blocks, if you want to, do cardiac, you already have so much of that base that is just like secondhand to you now, that I feel like you really do. It might be uncomfortable to move into a new, area, especially if you're already comfortable with the things that you're doing. But I also feel like you have more capacity to attempt those things or to learn those things. And so my only kind of split off that advice would just be to put less pressure on the first job. If there's something that you think is right for your family, or is right for your work-life balance, or is right for if you want to travel, whatever that looks like, if there's something that's really important to you. I think we have so much pressure on this first job. And I changed jobs after the first year. I loved my first job. I would have worked there the rest of my life, but it was far away from my family. We had a baby, and it was just time to get back closer to family. And so I left after a year, and it was like, I guess in my mind in school, I'd have thought, oh, no way you can change jobs after like a year. Like you need to put a couple of years in there, make sure you're established, and then people are going to, want to hire you. Like people want to hire CRNAs. If you have a pulse and you have a good record and you are like someone who wants to show up and do a good job, people want to hire you. And so, maybe they'll have a question about why you left a job earlier, whatever, but it's a question and you answer it and you move on. It literally had zero impact on my interview processes moving forward. And so I would just encourage people, if it's something that is just like taking up tons of your mind space, find what's important to you. Again, if that's experience, if that's, if you need time with your family, if you need a set schedule for a couple of years, if you need time to travel and you want to do a 1099 position, like whatever that is, I would say go for it. And if there's something down the road that you want to be re-engaged in down the road, I think that's totally reasonable. And you can still find those things. I would say that it's probably smart, like Cole mentioned, you don't want to limit yourself. If you can help it in that first year. I think that the more experiences you get, the more fresh you stay with those experiences, probably the better. But I would just say it's not that deep. Find what's important to you and go for it. And like you've already done it. This is the goal. You become a CRNA. You know what I mean? Like there's no next step. At least for me, there's not. I don't know what the next step would be. So go find the job that you want to work at.
And that's the beauty of anesthesia, is it's not simply one type of job placement. There are so many different options that you can do. I mean, you can work at an ambulatory setting and do day surgeries and have a no weekends, no holiday kind of schedule. You could do long shifts at a bigger facility and have more days off. You can do a GI center. There's you name it. There's so many different areas. I mean, you can just do ortho and do peripheral nerve blocks all day long. I mean, it depends on what you're passionate about. But as Tanner said, there's so many things that go into this that don't let one factor dictate which place you go to. It's definitely a multifactorial decision. But another thing that I really want to bring light to is, especially with everything politically going on in anesthesia, just know that when you come out of school, you are qualified to be able to do all these different things. So if you can help it, go somewhere that actually appreciates and values you. Because like I said, that's something that is so much more satisfying in our career path, is that we have autonomy, that we're able to, when we graduate, take care of all these different kinds of patients and do all these different types of procedures And so go somewhere that is going to appreciate you, be able to use you to the best of your ability. But again, that's just another factor that goes into it. There's so many factors, and you just got to kind of combine them all together to determine what is the best fit for you, as Tanner said.
So I think, Cole, a lot of our listeners, I know we have a large constituent of students and then some CRNAs. And I feel like it's really easy while you're going through training to just feel burnt out and like what is the point? Day after day, you're just going in, and sometimes it feels like you're just getting pummeled day after day, and it is grueling. It's exhausting. It's a long program. So, with that said, that beautiful picture, was it worth it?
100,000%. My wife and I often refer to the years in school as the dark years. I don't say that to scare anybody that's about to go into anesthesia school. But if you're in anesthesia school, I think you know what I'm talking about. It's not for the faint of heart, but it is 100% worth it. And you get done and you look back, and it's weird how your mind, I don't know if it just kind of forgets the day-to-day things. I mean, like, you remember going through so much suffering to grow yourself. Like,
Yeah.
again, I don't say that to scare people away from it, but
It's true though.
yeah,
You
like,
forget.
see, here's the thing: anesthesia school is supposed to grow. It's supposed to instill growth in you. It's supposed to make you a better provider. And I remember day one of our anesthesia program, our director said, "This is not going to be easy. Anesthesia school is meant to break you down so that it then can build you up into a better anesthesia provider." And I'll never forget those words. And it was so true. I had to trust the process. And yes, it first broke me down, and then it had to rebuild me up from the ashes into a better provider. And now I'm so grateful for it. Would I want to go back and go through those 3 years now, knowing what it was like to go through them? I think I'd have a whole different mindset if I were to start over again. But 100,000% it was worth it. I just don't want people to think that the process ends the day you graduate or the day the day you pass your boards. Because as Tanner and I alluded to already, it's a couple month process after you start your first job of continued growth before you finally, I feel like, get to that point where you're like, all right, I can settle down into my own shoes. I'm comfortable in this environment. I am loving my job as an anesthetist. So that's kind of the biggest advice I would say is, don't think that growth process necessarily ends the day you walk across the stage.
I would 100% say it's worth it too. And for me, like, the financial side of things, I don't think we need to go into like crazy detail with that, but just from a financial aspect, the money is great. And for some of you, you're going to want to get out and just grind and work a ton of shifts and make a ton of money. And that's great. For me, it was all about, like, I love having my time away. I love having my time to travel, be home with family, go do the things that I really enjoy. And so last year I looked at, like, on paper, my first year out of school, I worked about 7 months. We had our son in October. I took several months off after he was born. And if you looked on paper of what I made my first year, like, I could have made quite a bit more, obviously, if I would have worked the whole year. But what anesthesia school gave me was the ability to make a good income and then save that income and take time off and have time with my family, have time, enjoying my son being home and, having those first couple of months together. So for me too, when you talk about, is it worth it? When I think about the amount of time and effort I had to put in bedside to reach certain goals financially, or to even make sure I had the stability to be able to have the time off, like, your time now, I know those 3 years are grueling, and I won't take anything away from that. But what that affords you now is your time is now worth, whatever your contract says it's worth. But like, your time and what you're paid, for me, is incredible because it gives you so much time back, and I'm able to take a lot of time off, and I love that. I love again having that time, and so I think that for me is one of the things that, of course, when in school, I thought, oh, you're kind of seeing dollar signs and you're thinking, if I get out, I could make this amount of money. Now that I'm out, I'm like, man, you can make that kind of money. But what that does for me is allows me to work so much less and still maintain, the lifestyle that I would want to. So yeah, if you're in school and you're thinking, is it worth it? I know you hear over and over that people say it's the best career choice and it's great, but I would echo it. It's been nothing short of what I imagined.
And to continue on your financial spiel, a lot of people I hear, like, they'll drive by a person's house in my anesthesia group who lives in a really nice house, has been doing anesthesia for years. And they're like, man, it must be nice to, make that kind of money and be able to have that kind of lifestyle. And it's easy for people on the outside to say that, but what they don't know, they don't see, is the amount of hours that were sacrificed and hard work that was put in to get to that point. I mean, when you become a CRNA, you've earned it. And so, yes, you have a very nice financial lifestyle, and that's a huge perk, but it's not just handed to you. It's not just, quote, man, must be nice to be that person. I mean, you worked hard to get to that position, and you work hard day in and day out in anesthesia, but it's very gratifying to be able to, as Tanner said, have that kind of financial lifestyle and ability to be able to do it as you will. As Tanner said, a lot of people will work crazy hours and they'll just store away tons of money. But at the same time, you can make a lot of money and have a very balanced lifestyle with being able to travel with family. And that's what I love to do with my family. My wife and I love to take our kids on trips. We've been able to do so many more just short weekend trips or long weekend trips or 5-day trips here and there. We were able to do just so much more of those last minute decision trips that I never would have been able to do when I was an ICU nurse. And so it just opens the door for just a totally different lifestyle, which we love. But again, you got to put in the hard work to get there. And so I know it feels just devastating at times when you're going through school. You don't know if it's worth it. That is real, and I do not want to take that away at all. But I want you to know there is a huge light at the end of the tunnel, and you'll be so grateful that you put in the hard work to get there. And I think anything that's as rewarding as anesthesia is, it's so much more rewarding to know that you worked hard to get there. And that doesn't make the journey and the process easier when you're going through it. But when you do get through it and you look back and you see all the hard work that you put in, and now you're reaping the rewards of that, it makes it so much more just satisfying to finally be where you are, to be able to experience that, knowing that you put in all that hard work.
So if you're listening and you're wondering, is it worth it? This is a case study of two, but I would say absolutely. We've loved it. And it's only getting better the farther we get out of school. One of my buddies in school said anesthesia school is anesthesia. He's like, I swear everybody who gets out of school was in anesthesia during the whole 3 years, because you've like forgotten everything during those 3 years. You forget how hard it was. You forget all the pain, all the hours, and because you get out of it and you're living your new CRNA lifestyle, and you forget how difficult school was. I don't know if that's completely true. And I also think that maybe we stay a little more connected just because we're always, talking with students and kind of reliving some of those things. But school is so hard, the hardest thing I've ever done, but so worth it. And again, the further you get away from it and the more settled you become in your career, it's just only getting sweeter. So hopefully this is kind of a fun snapshot for you guys, and might answer some of the questions you've had. We always love when you guys send us messages on Instagram or through email. If you have any other questions, we'd always love to have a conversation about that. But it's been a blast, and I'm telling you, it's only getting better.